Good morning. Looks like we might catch a break with some of this FERS stuff. I looked up something yesterday online, try and see what was happening, since I kept seeing stuff pop up on my feed everywhere about, Trump's big, beautiful bill that he sent to Congress that they're trying to get through with all this different stuff in it. Some of it, of course, being changes to the federal retirement system. And the thing I found on the one page, apparently that whole thing about boosting everyone's contribution to 4.4%, even the people who had been there before, like 2013 and all of that, apparently that wasn't in the language of the bill moving forward. And they also had changed the dates on some of the stuff. So like the whole thing about possibly basing your retirement on your high 5 years instead of your high 3 is kicks in the bill according to what I read, like January the 1st of 2028. And I think they pushed some of that stuff back. And I think there are some exceptions for getting rid of that supplemental payment, the bridge payment, from the time you retire until you're old enough to take Social Security. Like I said before, that doesn't really affect me at this point, since I'll be 62 this year anyway, so I don't have to worry about the bridge payment stuff. But as I was mentioning before about the one guy I work with who was saying, man, if they change it to high 5 instead of high 3, I'm out of here. But that's something that's down the road a little ways anyways, I guess. Actually, you can go on e-retire in our system and, put in something to get a projection for a specific retirement date of what your annuity would be and all of that. And that's one of the dates that I have that I've put in before, is January the 1st, 2028. I'll have just turned 64 a couple of months before that. And a couple other things that I've been paying on that I'll have paid off in 2027. Actually, something I got like next year, and then the year after that. So I'd be debt free, basically. And so that's one of the dates I've thought about. I guess I could go December 1st, 2027, and still have things calculated on my high 3. But that would be an interesting thing to actually calculate with real numbers, to look back and see what your average salary would be at that point, if they went by your high 5 instead of your high 3. If you were just looking at your annuity, it might make sense to go ahead and quit. Even though if you stayed, say, another year or something, you might get a little bit higher percentage of your average salary. But if your average salary is going to be lower, then it would just be a wash, and average out. So those are things that everyone who's in that situation, of course, will have to think about, calculate the precise numbers to see what's going on. But that's interesting. See what happens. I know that doesn't help people who are going to be retiring after that. It's kind of funny. This one guy I work with here at the post office was out here on the dock yesterday and said, "You're going to retire with me, right? We got 17 more years to go." And I was like, 17 years? Yeah, I don't think so, man. I'd be 78 years old. I know there are people who do that kind of shit. Man, I sure hope I'm not one of them. I guess on the plus side, if I was still able to do this job when I was 78, I would be grateful for that. And obviously, I'd have plenty of money coming in. Actually, at that point, once I hit 67, I could collect my Social Security, still be getting my my full benefit, as they refer to it, at 67, and then still be here working, making as much money as I wanted to at the post office. And who knows, by that point, we might be making like $100,000 a year 17 years from now. I hope so, because who knows what inflation is going to be like, what your money's going to be worth 17 years down the line. But that's certainly not in my plan. I know people at the post office who were still working and collecting their full Social Security, especially, people who were older and their full retirement date, full benefit date for Social Security was 65. I've known several people who were doing that and collecting their Social Security and still working. So I guess it just depends what you're into, what your situation is. I've talked before about this one lady that I worked with up in a nearby office who, when I knew her, she was like 75 years old, and I was filling in there as the closing supervisor for a while. And yeah, she was 75. I went out and did a rod inspection with her one time. Man, she was something, still going strong. And then she finally retired when she was 80. But she was raising her grandkids, basically. You've got people in situations like that. And I'm assuming, of course, she was getting her full Social Security, probably, and still working at the post office. So in terms of how much money she had coming in, that's not a bad gig. The problem is, do you want to spend your life doing that? I was thinking yesterday when I was out, heat index over 100 degrees. And, these Florida summers, they make you wonder if you want to go another 17 days or 17 months, let alone another 17 years. I'm in the situation, though, of course, where I've been doing it for almost 27 years. Like August will be 27 years. So it does wear on you, if if I had only been doing it for like 10 years or something, then, I could think, okay, 17 more years, especially if you're like in your 40s or something. It's not that big a deal compared to being 61 and having already done it for over a quarter of a century and be out here in these brutal Florida summers with no AC or anything, and you think, damn, do I really want to do this? I'm still kind of up in the air about whether or not I'll have to see how I feel, what my mood is, I guess, this summer. I might just get off the overtime list, and just chill. 40 hours a week in this heat is more than enough for anybody, really. But we'll see what happens. I don't think our overtime situation is going to be super crazy anyways. We've got so many spare CCAs these days. And, sorry, just watching the osprey fly in here. There's an osprey nest right over our mail trucks here on the one light pole. My truck happens to be one of the ones that's right underneath that getting pooped on every day. But yeah, it's the only time we have a full vacation calendar right now really is in, July. And I was looking at the calendar after that. There's not really many people on the vacation list. So I don't know. Actually, I'm going to be off for 3 weeks, end of June, starting that week before the 4th of July and going for the next 3 weeks. So I won't be working overtime those weeks at all. It's my long weekend right before that. Might be interesting to work those days, Friday and Saturday, get a little OT going into those 3 weeks with no OT. But then again, man, I've been on the overtime list so long in my career, though. In my younger days, man, if you were on the overtime list, it was just a normal thing. We were all working 6 days a week forever. And those days are pretty much gone, at least where I work. I know there's still some places where apparently they're doing that, and people are still just racking up the overtime like crazy. But yeah, Florida summer, here we come. I like to spend my Florida summers hanging out at Barnes and Noble reading. Have to go tomorrow on my day off, pick up my new Michael Connelly book, a new series he started. So I got one of those reserved, waiting for me at Barnes and Noble. I've got the next 4 days off. My poor wife has to work the next 2 days, so I'll just be chilling. But there's a lot of fun to be had here in the summers in Florida. That's one thing I'm looking forward to about retirement, though. Even, if I'm in the Philippines or whatever, you're on your own schedule. Who cares if it's, 90 degrees outside? If you can get up, go out, do a little stuff in the morning when it's still a little cool, then spend the middle of the day indoors, kind of in the AC, or hanging out at the mall or whatever you're doing, you have a choice about what you want to do. It always amazes me when I'm watching the news in the morning and they're saying, take frequent breaks in the shade or air conditioning and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll tell my postmaster, sorry, I need more breaks today. It's kind of hot out there. When you're on your own and you're retired, you have that flexibility, how you're going to spend your day. It doesn't matter if it's hot. So if it's really hot, you spend the hottest part of the day indoors, and in the mornings and the evenings, you can do what you want. That's kind of the way a lot of people do things over in the Philippines, and even here in Florida for sure. But when you're working for the man, that's when you're out there in the hottest part of the day, and you don't have any choice about it, because that's how you're paying your bills. Anyways, time to get to work again for another day.